Hello, everyone. Welcome to Her Element Network Real Talk. I am Cynthia Trejo, Chief Encouragement Officer with Her Element Network. And today's show of Real Talk, where we have real women having real conversations about life's challenges and triumphs in their careers, business, and in life. Today we have Miss Laura Butler, who is the new president of Alpha El Paso, the Association of Latino Professionals for America. Thank you so much for joining us today, Laura.
Thank you for having me, Cynthia.
I'm excited about today's
I'm
topic.
excited for our conversation.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
So the topic today is Independent Mijita, Growing Up Latina. Rise, Mijita, Rise. I totally love that title. And we played around with the words for a little while, but
Mhm.
Independent Mijita, that's an oxymoron, right?
Mhm.
Kind of, sort of.
It
So
is.
tell us a little bit about yourself, Laura. Who is Laura Butler?
Hi. Well, thank you. First off, I'm excited that I became president of Alpha early September, and Alpha offers professional and career development for any of its members, and also some networking. So if anybody wants to join, please let us know. I know Cynthia and myself will be happy to talk to you a little bit more about that. But a little bit about me, why the independent mijita? Well, I think most of my life I wanted to make sure that I was independent and did my own thing, and I didn't have to depend on anybody else for whatever it is my task was or my goals were. But I still wanted to make sure that I made my family and my parents proud, right? I wanted their support and for them to be proud of me no matter what. So I actually was born and raised here in El Paso sometime in the 70s, and I was raised in Northeast El Paso. So I've lived in Northeast my entire life. I went to high school out here at Urban High School, graduated in the 90s, and then I went to UTEP, and I think I worked about 3 or 4 jobs while I was going to school. And I actually didn't think that going to UTEP would be something that I ever did. I mean, it wasn't really a thought. Most of the people I knew just went to community college, and then, that was it if they finished college. But I decided to go to UTEP and finished. Was very proud to be able to finish at the university. And then shortly after that, I started to work at Wells Fargo, and I worked there for over 18 years. But, I came from Mexican American parents, and my parents have been here for over 40 years and are citizens. I actually remember them going to English and to citizenship classes in the evenings, and my brother and I and other kids that would wait for their parents would play outside of the classroom as they were learning English and also going to their citizenship classes. Back then, I guess it was sometime in the 80s.
That's awesome. What awesome memories to have there, huh? To know that you were part of your parents becoming U.S. citizens and having that memory. So, going to
Oh,
the
yeah, they were determined.
yeah, I think that's where the independent Laura came from, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, because I mean, back then, um, this is kind of funny, but back then, our grandparents, they didn't live in the States yet. They came a little bit after. They worked here, but they didn't live out here. And I always thought, like, well, Mom, how come my grandmother knew English, and how come we have cousins in Tucson or all over Arizona, Phoenix, and then in LA as well. So my mom says, well, your grandfather, they used to work here, but during the depression they had to go back to Mexico because there were no more jobs. So then they were here way back then, but then there were no more jobs. And I thought, oh, okay, well, I always wondered, why did my grandmother know English so well, even more than you did? She's like, well, that's why, because she spent a lot of time out here.
That's interesting. Yeah, yeah. So
Mhm.
in your growing up, I've seen a lot in previous conversations where the person is being molded as they're growing up and forming the person that they are today.
Mhm.
Your independence. So mijita, in our culture, our parents call us mija, mijita, which is a form of cariño, right? But it's
Mhm.
also mija, like what's a good way to explain another way of mija? It's like, they
Mhm.
want to protect
It's a
you.
term of endearment.
It's a term of endearment, yes, and it's also a term of,
Yes, and like you know that whoever calls you that, their arms are around you,
yes.
right?
There you go. It's like,
Mhm. Mhm.
cariño and love. And mija is also, I mean, they within that cariño and love, there's this protection, right? There's a protection, I think, in the Hispanic culture. I'm Hispanic. I can't compare to any other,
Mhm.
but I can tell you that
Mhm.
there's this, form of protection that our parents want to have over the women, over the ladies in the home. Let's protect our mijas, right? Even
Mhm.
the moms are mijas to their moms, and so that goes
Oh
on and
yeah.
on. In fact, we were just talking about that. That even in your age, mija, it's still used, right? Even in our age,
Yes.
it doesn't go away. But how were you molded in that independence and being mija and that protection that they wanted for you?
I think that I first off, I was the first cousin born in from my dad's side. So I was Laurita, I was Mijita, and I still am to all my aunts. And my grandparents passed on, but I still that's what they call me still, right? Because I was the first one, and other cousins came after me, but they didn't live in El Paso or across the border. They actually lived in LA. The cousins that were closest to my age. So I was the only one for such a long time that I guess I had that in me where I may have gotten a lot of what I wanted when I was a kid because of that. But also, when, my parents raised me, it was about teaching me things, right? Teaching me how to do things on my own and be not being afraid. And that's something that I think I learned from my dad is I remember one time, well, the first time that I ever was part of a team was one day, he just tells me get in the car without telling me where we're going or what we're doing. And ever trusting of my dad, I said, sure, well, it's just me and him. We get in the car and then we go to Tobin Park out here in the Northeast. And he says, okay, well, this is your new team. You're going to play softball and this is your coach. And I thought, well, he never mentioned it. I wonder if he came out here and talked to the coach or was observing which team he was going to put me on. And I never asked him. I just would wonder about it. But then, that day, I remember he's like, okay, get off the car. Here's your new team, scurry along. I must have been maybe 11 years old. And I thought, well, okay, I guess I'm going to have to introduce myself to the coach and these group of girls. And um, I didn't go to school with any of them. They must have gone to another middle school because I know I didn't go to school with any of them. Maybe one, and I'm still friends with them to date. But I remember I had to just introduce myself and incorporate myself. And as I look back, I thought, well, that was a huge lesson because obviously my dad wanted me to be part of something outside of school and for me to not just be in my comfort zone sitting at home watching TV all summer. But we had to, I had to go out, I had to practice, I had to learn how to catch a ball so it doesn't hit me in the face. I had to learn how to hit the ball because back then we really didn't see women playing baseball or softball on TV, right? It was just, we would watch the Dodgers play
Right.
and that was it. Um, but the only sporting events that I had really gone to were my dad's soccer and baseball games and my brother's soccer and football games. And then we would go watch the Diablos all the time. But that was it. That, I just became part of a team. And I think ever since is where I started to think like, okay, it's okay to venture out and meet other people and be part of things where you not necessarily, it's not just you and your friends, but it's people that you wouldn't know. And I've been, very curious about people and who they are and their background ever since.
That's interesting. That's awesome. It's neat how your dad just kind of just threw you in there. One of the visuals that I got is when you learn how to swim and they just throw you into the pool. That's never
Oh, yeah.
happened to me, but they just throw you. Okay, learn how to swim. That's kind of
Yeah.
what he did to you. Just here, go for it. You're
Yes.
like, okay, I'll do what I need to do.
Sure. And I mean, there was winning and there was losing, and something that I've never been okay with is losing. I mean, I remember we would lose and I would cry. Like, I can't believe we lost. We have such a good team, and we tried so hard, but sometimes we would lose, and I'd have to live with that.
There's something about sports that brings out the
Mhm,
competitiveness in you, right? And
mhm.
I was always in sports as well. I from a young age, and I went did all the sports that there I could possibly do as a female. I always wanted to play football.
Mhm.
I was a little tomboy. I wanted to play football, and so when I was in school, I'd play football with the guys. It's funny, and
Yeah.
I would make touchdowns. But there's
Right.
that competitive spirit comes out, right? When you get introduced
Yes.
to sports, and of course being a team player and all that. There's a
Yes.
lot of great things that come from being in sports.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you made me think of something like going back to the Mijita thing. So that kind of gave me the courage as I was in middle school to join, and high school to join volleyball. And I mean, I'm barely 5 feet tall, but there I was, hitting the ball and learning um, how to play volleyball. And I signed myself up, right? Because I remember walking to register myself to the middle school, because back then 6th grade wasn't in middle school, it was in the elementary school, so I was already going to 7th grade. So I go and I register myself, and this was a whole new school because we had moved. So I should have gone to another middle school, but then we moved, and I got to meet a whole new set of people. And so I come home and I'm like, well, I signed up for volleyball, as short as I am, but I still, went and signed myself up. And then the Mijita part comes in because, yes, okay, great. You joined a sport and we support you and we want you to be independent, but don't shave your legs, even though you have to wear shorts. You better not shave your legs or you're going to be in trouble. And I remember I would wear like the tallest socks that I could find because the Mijita in me was telling me, listen to your mom, don't shave, even though all the other girls shave their legs. You are not supposed to.
Oh, that's
I don't
funny.
know why.
I don't know what that was about. I don't know. I don't know if that's still the situation nowadays. But I couldn't shave either. I would think I was 12 years old. I'm like, Mom, I really need to shave my
Yes.
legs.
And then 13, and then I'm like, I couldn't shave my legs. And
We couldn't wear makeup. And that's just a little bit of
oh
the strictness.
no.
The little bit of the strictness that we grew up with. But I couldn't wear makeup. I was already 12, 13 years old. I couldn't wear makeup. I wasn't
Oh,
allowed
I
to wear makeup.
couldn't
Yeah.
until I was 15. I couldn't wear makeup until I was 15, but yeah, that's part of the whole, okay, well, I'll be a little independent, but wait a minute,
Right.
which I kind of appreciate because it's like they still hold the reins
Right.
to your upbringing. And I'm lucky that I had both parents, and they supported each other. And I saw that throughout my childhood. But that kind of reminds me of, there's good independence, and then there's sometimes you have to think twice about, okay, what are my limits, what
Right.
are my goals, and am I meeting my goals, or do I need to shift to what my goals actually are? And I think not that they made me question myself, but they made me be even more sure about what I was doing.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
When in earlier conversations you and I had, we talked about how there were these expectations from your
Oh yeah.
family, right, of what you should be. I guess the milestones you should be accomplishing
Oh sure.
as mija, right? But you had
The
other
ever
intentions,
Yes, the never ending Latina or Mijita timeline,
right?
right? So, Mijita, you got to wake up on Saturday morning and clean the house.
With oldies,
with Juan Gabriel or with oldies. Oh my gosh, yes, yes, yes. I remember. And I still have those songs memorized, and I make sure that I download them so I'll never forget them. But absolutely, you need to, okay, ya puedes limpiar, ya sabes limpiar la casa. Oh, ya te puedes casar. And I'm like, wait, I'm like 16. Wait a minute here. And then, but wait, you're 16. And they're like, oh, but you can't have a boyfriend. No puedes tener novio. Y ya me dijeron que te vieron con este muchacho. ¿Por qué te encaminó a la casa? And I'm like, what? Nobody walked me home, I promise. And my mom's like, oh, but the neighbor told me.
Oh, that's funny.
Somebody walked you home, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, it's like, so, that happens too. It's like, okay, well, you need to learn how to make the sopa, but you can't have a boyfriend.
Right.
You need to, ya te tienes que casar. Ya te puedes casar, but don't have a boyfriend.
Right, right. I remember when I was
So anyway, I think about that timeline.
Yeah. I remember when I was growing up that my mom wanted me to iron. And I'm like, I don't want to iron. What do I want to iron? And she goes, no sabe ni planchar, pero quiere novio. And I'm like, what does ironing have to do with having a novio?
I'm not going to iron for him. Like, we just want to go to the movie.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Those sayings are funny. Right?
Yeah. So that, and then through high school, I think in high school is when I realized, wait a minute, I need to have some fun too. It can't just all be, work hard. And then I started working since I was 16. And I think through college, like I said, I must have had 3 or 4 jobs. I would, and I would go to school in between, right? But I remember, let's see, my first car my dad bought for me. And then the second car, he co-signed for me. So that was huge for me to, for him to co-sign. I think I must have been 18 or 19. And then I started one of my first professional jobs as a bank teller. Well, it was a credit union teller on Fort Bliss. And okay, I started to see a little bit more independence because by then I started to work for full time. I had my own money. A couple of my friends started to get married, but not me. And I'll tell you, none of my cousins either. So like I said, I'm the oldest on my dad's side, and a lot of my cousins, they also didn't get married until their 30s. And that's why, we're getting married. So we're fulfilling the Mijita timeline, but not exactly at the time everybody wanted, so most of us went to college, finished college, and have worked all of our time, all this time. And there's not a lot of kids on that side of the family because we all waited. It was like school, career, and then that. Like, as a matter of fact, I think I had told you before, when I got married, I was the first cousin to get married as well. And I remember throwing the bouquet. We had a small wedding, right? So it wasn't a big shindig like with bands or disco or anything. We just had a nice intimate wedding, maybe about 100 people. And I throw the bouquet, and then I see my cousins, they all fall back. And I'm like, wait a minute, how come nobody wants to pick up the bouquet? Like, it's just sitting there.
Oh my goodness, that's funny.
So that was different, right? Because we're, again, being independent mijitas. Right. They were supportive, but they didn't exactly want to be the next one.
That's funny.
They weren't ready yet.
Oh, that's funny.
But yeah, I mean, that's how a lot of us were raised, and my aunts, my mom, I think they were about raising strong women, but also ensuring that we experience that, good childhood and experience things with them. And I think that's what's made me be so close to my parents and and I see that with my cousins too. It's like now, as we're growing a little bit older, we find ourselves taking care of them and ensuring that they're okay. And I really, I love that because as, I've worked downtown for many, many years. And in downtown, you see a lot of elderly people that are shopping or, just walking downtown because everybody's used to going to El Centro, right?
Right.
And when I see elderly people walking by themselves or getting off the bus by themselves, my heart just stops. Like, why are they by themselves? And why are they, they can barely walk and they're downtown. Like, where are their kids or their family, and that just breaks my heart. And I think, again, independent, going to work downtown at the tower downtown, but still being very observant of what's going on around me and having that Mijita instinct always.
Right, right. So, growing up and you weren't meeting the timelines of what Mijita should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
How were your parents when you were doing things differently? How did they take that?
I think sometimes things would just happen and we would talk about it. And would I get in trouble sometimes? Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I'd get home later than I was supposed to because I always had a curfew. Out of my friends, I always had to be home, the earliest. And even later on, I lived at home probably until I was like 25. And I had already just graduated college. And I remember my aunt coming over one day because I had told my mom, well, I think it's time that I get my own apartment. And I talked to my parents about that. And it was like, what? She's going to come out of the house without, being married and she's going to live by herself? That just doesn't happen.
Right.
Right? A lot in our culture. I think now it happens a lot more, but it wasn't something usual.
Right, right.
And my mom says, well, if you want to be independent, and she says it in Spanish, si te quieres independizar, it's up to you. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of what you've accomplished. You have a full-time job. If you feel like it's time, then I'll support you. So I remember we talked to my dad and, everybody was like, great, well, we'll help you decorate. Then she tells my aunt, which is my mom's older sister. May, God rest her soul. She passed away from cancer a few years ago, but she was my favorite. She's the person that would call me every day at 7 a.m. because she knew I was on my way to work. So my aunt comes over and she's crying and she's like, but tell me why, what happened? Let's me and you talk. What's going on? Why are you moving? And I said, no, I'm just moving like up the street to an apartment. Like, I'm not moving to another city. I just want to, start being a little more independent. So then it's so funny because then they ended up, my mom and my aunt ended up, put decorating and cleaning the apartment because the independent girl was going to work. And I worked at the bank already. So I had to be at work from, 8 to 5. So they fixed my apartment. And it's so funny because let's see, about 7 or 8 years later is when I got married and bought a house, and they moved me into the house too because my husband and I were at work. So we kind of brought everything to the house, and then they fixed everything for us. So and the way that they liked it, right? So that was still I was off at work being independent, but the Mijita in me let my aunt and my mom just arrange the kitchen and my drawers however they saw fit.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
That is so awesome. Those are good memories, right?
Yes, and again, the closeness of the family is what really, keeps me strong and keeps me being the Mijita.
Right, right.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what advice would you give other independent mijas
I
as
would
we get to
say,
close?
do your own timeline. Do your own timeline, but still be the Mijita that's going to make yourself first of all proud and your family proud, because you are the apple in their eye, no matter what. And I think that is what helps me sleep at night is that I want to continue to do things to make myself, my husband, my family proud, but continue to succeed no matter what life throws at me. But the number one thing is have a timeline. Don't forget about your roots and your values, and do that timeline in your own time. It's okay.
Yeah, very
It's
true.
okay.
Very nice. Thank you, Laura. I really appreciate you taking the time to share a little bit of your life story and maybe some of what you shared today is gonna help other ladies who are going through that change of life and making things happen for their lives and still
Mm-hmm.
struggling with what home and what the balance of
Mm-hmm.
our culture and what those expectations are. So
Sure. I
yeah.
think, and also be proud of what you've done. I was just having a conversation with some really good friends of ours over the weekend, and we were talking about how when you run into people at the store and they ask you, oh, so did you get married and did you have kids and where do you live? Oh, do you have a house and where do you have a house? And then sometimes you think like, well, wait a minute, you know, I hadn't seen you in a while, and you want to know all of this about me, and I appreciate that. I mean, I'm all for it. Let's connect and have some coffee and talk about it. But you know, if you haven't done some of those things, like for me, I haven't had kids, and we probably won't. And just if you're on the other side and you're the person asking, if somebody hasn't done something to your expectation, don't necessarily say, "Oh, you haven't." Don't be judgmental. Just be happy for them because that's the life and the path that they chose.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm-hmm,
I totally agree with you.
mm-hmm.
100%. Awesome. Very good. Well, thank you all for joining us today for the topic of independent Mijita. And thank you, Laura, for sharing your life experiences and stories. And
Thank you.
we'll see you all again next time. Have an awesome
Thank
day.
you. Bye
Thank you,
bye.
Laura.